All right, welcome back to the Sean Trace Show, and I actually have one of my good friends talking to me from far away. Would you like to introduce yourself to our guest tonight?
Hi, Sean. It's good to have a chat to you, man. It's been a while.
It has been.
Yeah, look, my name's Brad Greenwood, and I've worked in film and
What do
stuff.
you do? Yeah, and film and stuff. And what
I'm
capacity?
doing makeup effects mostly these days, but I've done a
Yeah,
bit of concept art and art direction, and all sorts of things over the years. I've spent some time in Vietnam. That's how I know you, as
yeah,
well.
yeah.
And at the moment, I'm lecturing in makeup effects at Falmouth University in the UK.
That's awesome.
It's a great course. They're partnered with Millennium Effects and Gorton Studios up in London.
Nice.
And so we're kind of coming into our second group of students coming through now. So
It's
really
very
good
cool.
fun.
No. So most of the people that I have coming on are either working behind the camera, the directors, cinematographers, or actors in front of the camera.
Yeah.
Now, I haven't had anyone come on that have been in the art department or the hair and makeup, special effects. What does that look like? What type of things are you making on set? What type of makeup are you doing? I mean, because I know, and people are going to think, are you giving a blow dry and put on lipstick? Or you're not. It's very different. So talk to me about what type of things you do on a movie.
Yeah, look, I mean, sure, most of my sort of background experience doing makeup on movies is prosthetic makeup. And
Yeah.
so the difference with prosthetic makeup is that we usually get some pre-production time,
Yeah.
although that's getting shorter and shorter these days. There's always a lot of late nights involved.
Yeah.
And we usually start with life casting the actor. So that's like taking an impression of their face. And
Okay.
then we design and sculpt and make molds and produce silicone or latex pieces
It's
to
really
either
interesting.
age a person or create an injury or create, a creature from outer space or,
Or
from a
under the
horror
ocean.
film. Or from the ocean, yes,
Yeah.
that's right, exactly. So yeah, we're really, creating creatures, something that requires believable three-dimensional makeup.
Mm.
Sometimes this is also making props. It's like making dead bodies, creating some kind of interesting animatronic creature or a gorilla suit or something like that. So, and now kind of the makeup effects sort of discipline is embracing a lot of digital tools as well. So,
Yeah,
you know,
that was kind of my question. Like
mm,
when would people? Because I see a lot of the set photos from the Avengers and even the WandaVision, where you
mm,
have the Vision, and he is. So when you see it, he's got a lot of these digital prosthetics looking things,
so,
but actually there was a lot of it was a mix between CGI and makeup, prosthetics. So it was really
yeah,
interesting.
absolutely.
Is
Absolutely,
that more
man.
common now?
Absolutely, so much more so. I mean, like even what I'm teaching here at Falmouth and what I do with Neil Gorton, who runs the course, is that uh, we're embracing, I guess, what we're calling hybrid artists. So
Mm,
in our case, they're artists that maybe have a practical background in terms of building prosthetics and animatronics and creatures and masks and all of that stuff the traditional way,
hmm.
using traditional media, but also augmenting that with digital sculpting and 3D printing, and also, that fantastic crossover with the VFX department. We will sort of, have meetings and accommodate some aspects of the practical to be augmented digitally or vice versa. And the thing
Mm.
is now, Sean, is that this is so seamless. All of those technologies got to the point where, and all of those creative disciplines have got to the point where, it's not just about, how you do something. There used to be the argument that do we go practical or do we go CG? And I think that
Yeah.
that's almost not even an argument anymore. It's
That's
just
what I
a
was
question of
wondering.
like, how do we create something that looks cool?
Yeah.
And that is usually, more often than not, a combination.
Interesting. Do you find, I mean, I remember I worked on some, there's these on film sets, there's this really funny thing where you have, a lot of people who haven't worked on big features, people who work on smaller, productions. There's
Yeah,
like,
sure.
everyone does everything. But
Yeah,
when you get into, we're talking feature films, there are very large departments. Your camera crew, the camera department, it might be 20 guys. You have your grips, and it
yeah,
might be 15 guys there. You have the grips are handling lighting. Then you have hair and makeup. Then you have the sound. You have all these different teams.
yeah,
And the VFX team is running around. Like hey, we got to throw these things up for reference. And it's interesting that I you can see these clear delineation between teams, but it's actually really cool how you say that things, even though there are these different teams, it's still seamless. And there's
yeah.
still this communication of sorts. Go ahead.
Yeah, I know what you're saying, man. It's like, there is a difference. Like, and I think that's actually kind of the thing that's nice is like when maybe you do a smaller project, you get to have a bigger slice of that pie.
Yeah.
And you kind of, I find that on small projects, you can have more of a say. And it's always nice, like when you're on something small and, especially if the director really trusts you, and it's like, hey man, just, you go ahead and create something cool. But when you're on a big movie, it's a completely different vehicle, it's a completely different machine. And obviously, like, it's very, very departmental. And,
Yeah.
on those shows, it's not about flying your own flag. It is very much about being part of a team and where does my small little part sort of fit into this?
Yeah.
And I think it's sort of great to sort of be on both because
Yeah.
you really is a different experience. And so and the thing is, in any case, small or a bigger budget project, like you say, that sort of element of communication, working with other departments, and that sort of collaborative aspect is so important in movies. It's like it's sort of
Yeah.
what really makes filmmaking a very different kind of thing to other creative disciplines, in that it is totally
100%.
collaborative.
And I wish, it's like one of the things I love about Marvel is this.
Yeah.
They put those end credit scenes. And why do I love it? Because people have to sit through the credits. And one of the special things about whenever I would see my name pop up, I was just like, yeah, but there was also like so many other people. And it's like, you got to pull for all of them. And it is a team. It takes a mountain to make a film.
It really does. But it's sort of an amazing thing when you think about it that we do get credits as well. Like,
Right?
what other jobs do you
Right.
have where you can sit there and you get public acknowledgement for what you're
Right.
doing, So it is
even
kind of a
even like
special thing.
school teachers, it's like my daughter's
Yeah.
teacher, they don't have a scrolling thing on TV that says,
Yeah.
thank you, Miss Thompson or whatever, it's like, but for films you do, and it's beautiful for that.
It is. It's a great thing, and I am like you. I'm one of those guys. Like even when I was first getting into it, I remember going to the movies and just as a teenager, and I would just sit there and watch the credits, and I would look for names. Like,
Yeah.
and that's sort of how I kind of. This is even obviously before internet, and
Yeah.
and like I'd be sitting in the cinema as a teenager or a kid, looking for names, and that's how I worked out who was in the industry, and like
That's
that was how
awesome.
I worked out like who to follow. It's like it was just a little kind of thing, and that was just it was just about really being into it, really being
That's
into
awesome.
film and caring enough that I would sit through credits. And, if I was with my family or friends, they could be like, "Why, man, you can leave the cinema now. You don't have to sit here." But it's like, no, I have to sit here and watch everything.
You got to pay attention. That's awesome,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah.
It's awesome. And it's just cool that I know some of the credits that you have to your name. You've been on some fun stuff, man.
Yeah, man.
I got to know more about your work from when you came to me at Vietnam because my wife is a singer and she has makeup people, and you were like, Sean, I'm helping build out the team for Kong.
Yeah.
And you're like,
Yeah.
do you know any makeup artists? And I sent a couple people with you,
Yeah,
to
man.
I think one or two, and
Yeah.
yeah, it was super awesome to hear. And I was just like, tell me some about what it's like on this production. It sounds pretty awesome.
Well, that was
So
it, man. Like, because I knew that you were in it. Like, I knew you had your own production company and stuff like
yeah,
that. And I was like, I don't know anyone. And, I've got to recruit like this big team,
yeah,
And so, yeah, sort of through trial and error and getting a few names here and a few names there, we sort of
yeah.
got together a team of I think, ultimately about 35 hair and makeup people. Uh,
35, and that's
yeah.
the like, and that's what the crazy thing to me again is like this sheer scale, like.
Oh, yeah. That's right.
People don't. One of my favorites, one of the biggest groups that I ever seen have been on was I worked. I've referenced this one a lot, but it's the biggest movie I was on with, like, for the number of people working at one time as Angels and Demons. It was Ron
Oh,
Howard.
yeah, yeah.
And there was one scene because they couldn't shoot in Rome. They didn't have
Yeah.
permission to shoot in Rome, and so because they can't get St. Peter's, Square, and it's like the Catholic, and the movie is pretty like aggressive towards the Catholic Church, and there's just no way they're getting access to some of these
Yeah.
places that they wanted to shoot in. So they built it in the parking lot of the Great Western Forum, or what was the Forum, in Los Angeles,
Oh,
and.
magical movies, man.
Yeah, and there was I think there was this one day that there were 300 extras,
Yeah.
and
Crazy.
then like hair and makeup, it was
Yeah.
just this. You have 300 people that all have to go through hair and makeup, every single last one of them, and and then they got to go to wardrobe, and then you got to. It's an insane number of people. So tell me about Kong. 35 people doing hair. What was
Yeah,
that
well,
like?
I mean,
What type of stuff were you doing on that one?
Yeah. So I mean, yeah, the sort of days you're talking about, those big extras days, are huge for hair and makeup, and they're the days that you really need to have a lot of additional makeup artists,
Yeah.
and if you're in if you're in LA,
No problem.
no problem. There's a lot of people, a lot of amazing artists there working, and if you're here in the UK, it's the same deal, or anywhere really that is doing a lot of production and has
Yeah.
a lot of history of production. But in Vietnam, I mean, it's just like it was like, oh my God, how am I going to get a local team? And
Yeah.
I mean, Bill Corso and Jason Baird and the guys that were sort of running that show, running that department, they were like, hey man, just get people that you think have the potential, get
Yeah.
people that you think, because we've got a system, there was a way, like what we were doing on that was all the iwi natives that lived on Kong Island. And so there
Yeah.
was like massive groups of all these natives, and they all had a very specific tattooing and keloid scars and all these sort of different looks that were very beautiful and very intricate. And some of them, like for our kind of hero makeups, they were almost all complete full body prosthetics, which can
That's
take
unreal.
hours. Yeah. And
So that's crazy. I want to come back to that, but
yeah.
what type of time? Like, I mean, you guys must have been there. Say a shoot day starts. Shoot days start early, where it was like
Oh, yeah,
18-hour
yeah.
days or stuff.
Yeah, we
I
started.
mean-
So I think a couple of days there we started at 2 a.m.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then what time did you wrap? Like 11 p.m.
I think we were. We weren't. I don't think we were ever that late. It was a
Okay.
lot of early mornings, but can't really remember when we wrapped, but the good thing about, as you know, mate, like the good thing about something like Kong or some of the bigger budget productions is that they really have to adhere to,
The law,
making sure
the
people have their
timing.
turnaround and
Yes,
things
they
like
do.
that. So we were never kind of in that situation. Um, it's usually the low budget productions or the independent productions, or sometimes just a production in part of the world where they don't have those sort of
Yeah,
concerns, or they don't look after the crew in the way that we sort of used to. That you can do those really, really long hours,
yeah.
and you can do those really long hours on a big film, but yeah, usually you want to get your turnaround. So
Yeah.
it
Well,
was sort of good. They were good like that.
what about you also had some really cool photos that I'll pop up when I'm editing this you worked on Aquaman, right?
Yeah, I did. So
I want to
that
know
was
about
really
those
cool.
prosthetics. That
Yeah,
looks really cool.
I will. So all of that stuff was like all of the actual designs, all of the prosthetics themselves were created by a fantastic makeup effects guy called Justin Rowley and his team in LA at Fractured Effects,
Okay.
a super awesome company. Have done lots of cool stuff. They just did all the zombies for uh, the
The one.
Netflix thing, the Zack
Yeah,
Snyder
the Zack Snyder and
Army
Dave
of the Dead.
Bautista, Army of the Dead. That was a
Yeah, yeah.
really
So,
good
so Justin
movie.
and his team did all that stuff.
That's
They're
awesome.
super cool guys. So yeah, it was really, that was a great sort of project because I got involved because they were shooting in Australia, and
Mm,
I think I was in Vietnam at the time, but
yeah.
some of the guys that I've worked with a lot were on the team, and so yeah, they reached out to me and said, "Would you like to come over and do Aquaman for a couple of months?" And I was like, "Hell yeah, that's not even like a question, right?"
Right.
And it was really
Let
cool.
me take a second to think about that.
Yeah,
Yes.
yes, that's right. So, and we were shooting at the Warner Roadshow Studios in Queensland, which is, I
Nice.
think they have maybe about, I'm guessing they probably have 12, 15 sound stages now.
Yeah.
And it's a big studio with a couple of water tanks that get
Nice.
used a lot. So that was, things like Pirates of the Caribbean and Aquaman, anything that's basically got water. The
Yeah.
water tanks are really a big draw card for those studios. So
Nice.
and they also have lots of great crew in Queensland.
Yeah. Is that the
Yeah, man. So I spent 2 or 3 months on that, and we were doing prosthetic application. We were doing suiting up guys in all kinds of crazy creature suits and
That's so cool.
yeah, things like that. But yeah, that was interesting. Like we also, again, this is a big budget film that can make decisions in a different way.
Interesting.
James Wan was the director, is an
Yeah.
amazing filmmaker, and but I do remember days where we had guys in suits, and for whatever reason, as expensive as these suits were, and as much time had gone into them, um, they would make a decision on the day, like, don't worry, we'll do it. We'll do the rest of it CG. Like, so there were really, those kind of big calls can be made on movies like that, where
Yeah.
you can completely replace work that has been in the process of being made over months, and they can replace work overnight or find a different approach to it, and there's the kind of resources to do that.
That's amazing.
So it is very, very different on those kind of shows, as
Yeah.
opposed to a smaller show where you just wouldn't have those resources. If you build it, you've
Yeah.
got to use it.
Yeah. That's really interesting. Now, what got you into this work? How did you find this?
Man, yeah, like you, mate. Like everybody that's sort of in this, you're in it because you love it. Like I
Yeah.
just loved, man. I just loved movies. Like I remember, um, you know, going to the drive-in,
Right.
and I must have been pretty young. Would have been like early '80s, maybe '81, and I saw Clash of the Titans.
Nice.
It blew my mind. And I think it was like the last movie that the famous stop motion animator Ray Harryhausen, I think it was kind of like his last big movie. But
Yeah.
for me, that was like an introduction to stop motion animation. And that's what
Yeah.
I wanted to be, man. I wanted to be a stop motion animator at that point. And I immediately went back to my grandmother's house, and used to be a florist. So she had all this plasticine and clay in her cupboard because they
That's
used to
pretty
use
cool.
that in that industry.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I started making little clay models and filming it with my dad's Super 8 camera. Because you
Nice.
could do like one frame at a
One
time
frame
on
at a
those
time.
little Super 8 cameras.
Yeah.
And then I don't know. At some point, I think I read an article on Rick Baker in Fangoria magazine, which was like the kind of really popular horror magazine at the
Nice.
time, and I was like, oh wow, you can make masks and stuff like that, and and it's interesting when I see my students now. They just have so many resources, and there are so many people out there doing this stuff and doing it beautifully.
Yeah.
And there's so many ways that you can learn, and you can get products anywhere.
Yeah. The
And all
internet
the
has
very best
changed the
products.
game for accessibility of getting stuff.
Oh
It's
yeah,
like,
man! Like I searched and searched to find like a bottle of latex at like a little local makeup supplier, and they're like, they had to go to like the back room and dig it out because like no one ever used it. And now I see just Instagram is
yeah.
full of just incredible special effects makeup that people are doing.
Yeah.
And just the scale of this industry, and how many people are doing it. But yeah, when I got into it as a kid in Brisbane, Australia,
Yeah.
I just I just was so obsessed with it and wanted so badly to do it that I just looked for anything I could.
Yeah.
I would open books, and I would study what was on the shelf in the photograph, to see if I could pick up a name of something. And
Man.
yeah, it was a different time, man, but it was
Right.
good. That's how I got into it. I just loved it.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. And it's like, that's what I think people have to have to make it in any industry.
Oh yeah,
You have to have that fire that
you do.
if you don't do this, if you don't
Yeah.
pursue this, it will burn you up.
Yeah.
It will burn you from the inside if you don't follow it. And it's
Yeah,
like, there are those days where if I am not creating, something toward
Oh yeah,
my goal, I feel that fire, and it motivates me, and it drives me to go and find out more, to learn more, and
yeah, man. I just, Sean, I couldn't agree with you more. Like, to me, that's really when you look at anybody that has, they're either really good at their craft or they've managed well in their career, or they're just good. They're just good artists. They're good musicians. They're good filmmakers. It's because they love it. Like,
Yeah.
because it takes such a long time and such consistent practice to get any good at
Yes.
anything that if
Yes.
you don't love it, what
Yeah.
else is going to drive you to do
Yeah.
that? It's got to
Yeah.
be in your blood. And I relate to you when you say that because, for me, being an artist and creating, I just can't not do that. It's part of who I am, and it's like I just honestly feel like it's in my blood for some reason,
Yeah.
some way. And yeah,
Yeah.
I think if someone said to me, hey man, forget it, you can't create anymore. That's done for you. I think it'd be over for me. Like I just couldn't imagine that.
I couldn't either, man. There was something that Carl Winter, you watched that podcast.
I am gonna watch that. I'm
Yeah.
really interested to
So
listen.
he told me in his thing that like there was a music video he was making for his band, and in the music video he had this vision. He and the team had this vision of getting a boat, and they couldn't shoot the boat because the song, he said, kind of sounded pirate, like it was like a pirate type song,
Yeah.
And so he had this idea. And so instead of putting the boat in the water, he's like, what if we put the boat on sand? you know, and so we look like we're sailing the boat, you know, through this. There's this epic journey across sand. And then he's like, well, we need a boat. And he decided to build it. And he built the boat himself. It's like, you know, a 20-foot long boat. It's about 5-meter long boat. And, you know, and he just said, why not? Because it was a passion that he had. He's like, thank God it wasn't on the water, because I'm sure it wouldn't have floated. But, you know, there was this like, and I was like, to do something like that, you have to have that fire inside of you.
You do, absolutely. You know, it's the impulse to create, it's the impulse to make something that's in your mind's eye a completely, something not only real and tangible, but something that other people, when you an audience is able to sort of, you know, experience that the story you're telling there resonates with them too, you know. And I think for movies and music and all sort of creative disciplines, that's really the thing, you know. There has to be an element of storytelling in what you're doing, and when you create something that has that, and, you know, when you're sharing something that sort of is something you feel passionate about, then I think that often does resonate with an audience, you know.
And it's amazing that, like, you brought up something like, too, like, what's beautiful to me is that when you make a film, there are all of these departments that work toward a single goal. And what that goal is, when the first movies were by, was it Lumiere? The French, I think that was who it was. And so there were all of these early movies, and there was this one, one of the first movies, I don't know if this one was by Lumiere or not, but there was a picture, it was a train. All it was a video of a train. People
jumped out of the road. Right?
People were jumping out of the way. People thought it was it was going to come out of the screen. Yeah. And as we've gotten better, people have become more savvy. You know, we don't just like, oh, that's real. And there's the concept of, like, people say that the idea is when you watch a movie, there's something called the temporary suspension of disbelief. And I remember studying about this in film class, you know, and it was like, what is that? It means that for a short period of time, the audience will put aside that's not going to happen in real life. That's not how it works. You know, you're like, you know, you for a little while, you go, you know, and some movies take advantage of that. Let's Fast and the Furious franchise, you know, we're going to blast a car into space. Well, that's really? Right. Yeah, the physics don't quite work in the real world. But, like, with what I'm getting to, though, is that we are progressing with CGI, with makeup arts, with prosthetics, with all of these things to a point where the temporary suspension of disbelief isn't as big of a thing, because it is so friggin' realistic. That people actually believe it's real. You know, you look at a movie that got me, though, recently, and it was just because it was a mixture of everything, was 1917.
I saw it. I literally saw that last night.
So my God.
Yeah.
Like, and for me, coming from the camera side, you know, like that one take that they did was at the beginning of the movie was at least 7 minutes long. And to think about, to people who don't understand film, a 7-minute take is insanity. Because
I was like looking for, like, hang on, where are they cutting it? Like, where is the moment? You know, and there was a couple of, like, where they would go into a dark
enter the dark room. I think when they entered the dark room was a cut point. And, like, I haven't double checked, but, like, up to that, walking through. And one of the things I watch for, and this is something that you can take a peek when you watch a lot of big movies. The people who kill it in the big movies are the background actors, because one of the hardest things to do as an actor on set, whether you are this actor or that actor, don't look at the goddamn camera.
Yeah.
And it's really hard for people not to look at the damn camera.
That's right.
And you have to force yourself. You're like, the camera's here. You're like, I will now look this way. Even though there's like 15 people standing right here, you just have to be like, no one messed up in that. And it's amazing for that. But
it is. I thought it incredible. I just don't know how to do it. It's amazing.
Insane. He won the DOP won for best cinematography, which is completely makes sense,
right?
I think so.
Yeah. It's
I think so. Amazing. No. What did you enjoy about that movie?
Well, it's interesting.
Coming from your perspective.
Yeah. Well, certainly there were a lot of makeup effects in it. It's a really incredible work. And there were a hell of a lot of dead bodies. Just I think the thing, when I looked at that movie, naturally I was drawn in by the story. I thought the idea of just following these guys and feeling like it was it being one take was a very immersive way to kind of watch the movie. But I just kept thinking, oh my God, the production design, the art department,
right?
They had to create this endless landscape, beautifully dressed all the way through. Right. I couldn't. And actually, some of the camera stuff, there's a moment where they sort of go down into a crater. It's full of water.
And dead bodies.
But they go this way, and the camera goes through the water this way.
Yes.
It's just how did they do that? It's not a ripple or anything. It's really amazing work.
Unreal work.
The production design just absolutely blew my mind.
So I'm gonna pick your mind now. What is your favorite production that you were on?
My favorite production that I was on. I've done a lot. I've done a lot of different kind of films, and some of my favorite ones have maybe not necessarily been the biggest ones or the most popular ones. But I can think of I actually really years and years ago I did Scooby Doo.
That's awesome. I saw that. You sent me the poster. And, I saw that.
Yeah. What I had a lot of fun on that because. Concept guy, his name was Matt, and he was a car designer, an incredible. But so he would do all the kind of the hard surface mechanical stuff, and I would do all the organic stuff. And I also had an amazing production designer, Bill Bowes. I think he does things like Monkey Bone, and I think he's done a couple of Marvel films and stuff like that. And he was just such an awesome guy. And an incredible artist. He built these small versions of all the sets. That's awesome. Small scale versions. Sometimes he did big ones, quarter scale versions of the sets. And he would just go away into his room, and you would hear all this chiseling and cutting and sawing and gluing, and he'd slap some paint on it, and it would be this work of art in and of itself, and then we would give that to the construction team, and they would build the full-scale sets.
That's unreal.
Yeah, but I got to do that was my first. The reason I liked that movie was because I'd been doing a lot of makeup effects up to that point, and that was my first time really being a concept artist,
nice.
Which I then went on to do. That was kind of a springboard for me because I think I did maybe Inspector Gadget 2 after that, which was another sort of fun movie. And then I did something else, and then I ended up going to Animalogic in Sydney, and I ended up working on Happy Feet for a few years. And that was, again, a really different kind of thing because we were working with George Miller, who did Fury Road and the Mad Max films.
Yeah.
And it was a completely different movie for him. And it was a completely different experience for me because I'd never really done anything, even though I actually had, when I was back at art college, I did a lot of animation, traditional animation.
Yeah.
I never really had worked in animation. So it was my first kind of experience of that, and they did a lot of motion capture and stuff as well for that. So yeah, that was that kind of time was really cool, But man, there's so many films.
Each one is special in its own way, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Now, how did you how did you study for this career profession? How did you
Well, man,
train for it?
yeah,
On
it's
the
funny. I
job,
never
or
had
was
any.
it,
No, I
or
never had any. When it comes to makeup, I never had any traditional training as a makeup artist at all.
nice,
But I did go to art college in Brisbane for 3 years, and like
nice,
did my BA, and that was a good time. And in fact, all the guys I was in class with way back then are all working in the business now.
nice.
And like one of my friends is he set up a company and they're doing a lot of animation for DreamWorks, and um, so it's like it was really nice to kind of, and we're all still we rarely are in touch because we're all off doing different things, but we still know each other and hang out when we can and stuff like that. But sort of to answer your question, I kind of just taught myself a lot of things, I sort of started out working on at that time working on like American TV shows and movies of the week and stuff. But my break was really doing the Lord of the Rings films. I ended up at Weta
Let's
Workshop, you
let's
know.
talk about that. I
Yeah,
mean,
that
talk
was
about
nuts.
epic,
Like
man.
it's a long time ago now. Like it's
Yeah.
20 years ago plus, and it's just I
Which
can't
how
believe that time's
crazy
gone.
that it's been 20 years since the Lord of the Rings, man.
And from what I understand, they're going to bring the Amazon Prime TV series here to the UK, which
Oh,
is going to be
I
interesting.
heard that they
Yeah,
shifted out of where it was
yeah.
at and then moved
So
into the
that's been a
UK.
big change because the whole Tolkien franchise has always been New Zealand,
Always
and
in New
it's such a
Zealand.
perfect place for it, stuff like that. Hey, look, uh,
Well, I think one of the things that's
that was
shifting stuff too is that that new technology that they're utilizing in the Mandalorian, where
yes,
I
absolutely.
think that has changed up the game so that they can be projecting what looks like New Zealand.
That's
And
it.
because I think that's what's happening right now. And I think that is really changing the games. I think that a lot more stuff is going to be on sound stages because it keeps costs way down. You know what I mean?
It's an
Versus,
incredible technology. I mean, essentially, it's in it's a matte painting on set where they're able to utilize the lighting from that
yeah,
environment as well. Like so, it's incredible. Kind of, I mean, there's so many things now that are a leap forward in terms of visual development on movies and the ability to shoot stuff, wherever and whenever.
yeah.
And
I'm
so yeah, no, I think things have
blown
just
away,
come
man.
such an incredible long way since then. And
Yeah.
but yeah, that was kind of like I think that
Going, yeah,
yeah,
going back to the Lord of the Rings. Yeah.
going back to that, I think that was sort of my first sort of experience. Richard Taylor was the guy that he now has a swag of Oscars. It's like, but he was the guy that kind of, spearheaded all the effects work and the armor and the miniatures and everything for that.
Yeah.
And
What was your role in that? Were you just
I was a senior prosthetics technician. I was like,
there was a lot of
yeah,
prosthetics in that,
a
man.
lot of prosthetics.
Did you do all three movies?
I worked in all three movies. It's like, so
All the Uruk-hai? Tell me you did all the Uruk-hai prosthetics. That was
the
all of
Yurika,
the
yeah. So
Yeah.
I didn't do I didn't do some of those, but I was there while we were doing the Yurika and while
That's
we were
awesome.
developing those. And there was a lot of really, man, there's so many amazing artists on that show.
Right.
And the Yurika, for example, like they went through a whole process. So I remember a screen test that we did where they were actually green and they had pink eyes.
Really?
Yeah, we had a very different look. There were some amazing artists like Nori Honda, Gino Esfito, like a lot of guys that did development work on the Yurika. But yeah, man, I did, when I was there, I did
What were you doing?
orcs, hobbit. I did a lot of hobbit feet, hobbit ears.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I think spent nearly 6 months on Hobbit duties, and it was really weird because we had different, like originally we were going to have these very complex mechanical feet that could wriggle the toes and all sort of stuff. And we did some prototypes of all that kind of stuff. And in
Amazing.
the end, we realized wear slippers, like his
Yeah.
latex slippers. It's just like, so we kind of like, it was the experience of doing stuff that had to be highly detailed on a really grand scale. And
Hmm.
like, I think I was involved with Gimli for a while. Like, we re-sculpted his makeup like 3 times and used
Wow.
different materials. And yeah, we did a lot of background masks and suits and stuff like that. Um, it was funny, man, because there was a lot of, Weta is today are just one of the empires of the world,
Yeah.
and Weta Workshop has done so many incredible things. But back then, it was a different place. It wasn't
Yeah.
this sort of the corporation it is now.
Yeah.
Back then, both Weta Workshop and Weta Digital were like probably what ILM was like when they first started.
Right.
It was a bunch of kids, and we were just all trying to figure out how to do this stuff.
Yeah.
And
Right.
we would try, and it was a massive undertaking. Like,
Yeah.
nothing had
I'm
ever been
sure.
made like that before. And most of us working on it had never done anything like that before.
It like we're not even talking about just in production, like building up to production. Like
Oh yeah,
you're putting in all of the development and all of this way before anything starts rolling.
that's
Years before.
exactly right. That's exactly
Like,
right. Like, this is literally years of pre-production work.
yeah.
And and it was years because we were in pre-production. It was totally unique in that we were pretty much making 3 films simultaneously.
Yeah.
We were in pre-production while we were in production. So
Mm.
like,
Wow.
and it was just such a long, I mean, I think I was on it for maybe a couple of years. So like, I did miss out on parts of the film, but
Yeah.
of the films, but I was there for a lot of it. And yeah, it was just world building on a scale that, we talk about world building in movies, and that was world building, and my
On another
first
level.
real education in what it takes to be a world builder.
Yeah.
And
I mean, you think about that too.
Yeah.
Like with that one, you have so many. It's not just one world. Like you
Yeah.
have so many. Like you have Mordor, you have Rohan. And like
Yeah.
so many of these movies. Like you look at the Harry Potter stuff, and that was pretty insane what they did for building out Hogwarts and stuff. But it was one location. You know what I mean?
Right. That's right.
Versus the Lord of the Rings, you have the Hobbiton, and it's still there. Like the whole
Yeah.
Hobbiton, they built all that,
That's
and
right. That's
the
right.
art department on that is
Yeah.
just next level, and I mean, and then in each of those they had, the costume departments and the hair and makeup departments, and that's the thing that I think people. And I'm trying to, like, in this podcast, interview as many people that are in production design and hair and makeup and costuming that I can, because they're unsung heroes. There's this great infographic of what a movie would be like without each person, and it's like pretty funny. A movie without a script, and it's just people standing there like, hang on, what are we doing? A movie without hair and makeup, and it's just like everyone looks like crap. A movie without costumes, and people are all naked. You know what I mean? It's like
That's right.
it's like people forget that there are these departments that are just absolutely, completely important to what you're doing. Like, my wife was cracking up because she bought me makeup to put on before I shoot, for when we go on stage. And I every time I shoot this, I'll, put on some powder, clean myself up a little bit. And like, but people don't realize, like, that's when you're on camera, you have to do that. You have to have makeup. You have to have your wardrobe. And for my podcast, I do everything myself right now because I'm stuck at home. Don't have anyone that can come over because of COVID, but what can you do?
I love those videos that you do with your wife as well, with V.
Thanks,
Like,
man.
they're awesome. You're both such amazing singers as well.
We got into that. I started singing with her. I'm going to be doing more music with her and more on my own as well, just because I just love music. That was one of my early passions that I wanted to do more of. But we got into that because of necessity.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
when my daughter was born, we, the music market in Vietnam is very much a live music market, and it's not very forgiving for new mothers. Let's just say it that way.
Yeah,
It was
I understand what you mean.
very challenging. People like my wife was like, I still sing very well. And they're like, yeah, but you just had a baby. And it was like they were, trying to poke at, well, every woman, gains weight when they have a kid. And they were really being hard with my wife at that time. And so, I respect their business. I'm not throwing any judgment at the way people handle their stuff or the way what we had to deal with. But we were like, well, we don't have much going on. Let's try to sing some songs together and see how it goes. And people loved it. And so we kind of went with it. And so for me, I think sometimes bad situations, bad events can be the catalyst that is needed to start to kick your butt into gear and get you moving. It's like,
man, it is absolutely. Like, I have to say that's true. Like, whether it's your personal life, your professional life, it's those really challenging times where you're being tested and you're frustrated and things are not going well. I think that's when you kind of have to dig deep and go, well, what's the measure of my character here? Can I kind of, pull all this together and make it work?
I love that. My parents, one of the things that I love that my parents did is they got me into sports when I was a kid. And the reason I love that is because, when I played volleyball and I did martial arts, I did judo. Yeah. And, both of those, you're on the ground a lot. Volleyball, you're diving for that ball, and judo, you're getting thrown on the ground. And the thing is that, like, I would always get up more hungry. You know what I mean? Like, if someone scored a point on me, I would come back with fire in my veins. Yeah. You know what I mean? Ready to dish it back. And for me, that's always how, and that was taught. And it was in me, but it was also taught, that adversity doesn't have to be something that defeats you. And even if you're being defeated, you go down into that lava, just kind of like this, what I mean? You don't drop the fight, you know what I mean? You keep fighting, keep going.
Yeah.
And that's kind of my approach.
It's funny you should bring that up because, what I sort of regret that I didn't do when I was younger was martial arts or any kind of sort of fight training or sort of intensive sports because, I have always noticed this thing, and I would sort of include you in this kind of observation as well, is that anyone that sort of had martial arts in their background, I don't know what it is, but anyone's had martial arts in their background, as adults, particularly men, I noticed that they have a good kind of, there's a calmness, there's a self-discipline, there's leadership qualities, there's, just those sort of elements that you kind of need in life, and I mean, my wife, Dao, she's Vietnamese as well, and she'll hate me saying this, but I know that when she was younger, she did a bit of fight training, and she's a badass, man. She's really got a good fighting spirit, and she's really pushed me to kind of, when things are difficult, put your race face on, get on with it, don't complain, just do it.
You know something though that's really when I would compete, the guys that when you get in there and the guys that are, you don't need to be scared if you see someone and they're all worked up, making a lot of noise. It's the guy who's sitting there quietly staring at you and it's no emotion. That's the guy you need to watch out for. The guy's just like, it just has no, man, that guy's going to kick your butt. Like that guy's going to come at you.
That's so funny. We were watching a movie the other night. I can't remember what it was, but there was a scene in it where there was a turning point with this character, and he just went really quiet, and he went really calm. It was like, just a flat ocean. It was just like, and Dal said, and now it's going to happen. Now it's going to happen. I said, yes, that's right.
In my real life, martial arts has served me more often than not, less in fights, but more often in keeping my cool. And I don't always keep my cool, but some of in catastrophic situations, there was a couple. I have three different situations that I was able to keep my cool. One, I was driving and I saw a car flip over into a river, and I pulled over and I jump out, and it was all of these people, and they were just standing there. People freeze. When you get into crisis, a lot of people freeze. And all these people were freezing and just staring at the car. And I just charged down to the car, and I yelled, and I looked at people, and they're just like, oh. And it's like, someone give me something to break this window. And suddenly this guy comes out, and the guy tosses me a golf club. And I swung, boom, and I kind of like didn't hit it in the first time. I swung again, and I broke the window, and I tossed the golf club back up, and then I just shoved my hand in the car, and I felt a hand grab my hand, and I just pulled.
Wow.
And I yanked this guy out. And dude, that adrenaline's pumping. I'm not that strong, but I yanked a person straight out of a car. And I got back up onto the side of like the embankment, and the kid in the car just sunk underwater. It had flipped over underwater, and it was slowly sinking in the mud, and it was completely underwater after that.
Wow.
And the golf club had been bent like in this year.
Oh my God.
And I was
what
like, wow,
amazing.
But I didn't know. It was just like, and then I just kind of went back. And the cool thing is I left and forgot about it, right? And the newspaper called me the next day, and I shared a little bit. It was just like, I didn't have a picture or anything, but just some words. Years later, about 2 years ago, I got this message on Facebook. Are you Sean Trace that saved a guy in a car?
Really?
Yeah. And are you Sean Trace, the guy that saved someone in a car in Napa Valley 10 years ago? I've been looking for Sean Trace. And I was like, I pulled the guy out of a car. And the guy's like, that guy was me. And I've been looking for you for years, and I wanted to say thank you. And I was just like,
whoa, man.
It was crazy, man.
Amazing. I've got goosebumps.
And so it was really special. Yeah. And I've had a couple times where things got crazy, and I was able to keep calm. And I credit my martial arts training. I credit that training as well. Well, I want to circle back on you though. What advice? That was cool. That was kind of tied into what I was going to ask you.
I'd like to, I am definitely interested in that, because I know a couple of guys that work in film that, and they're guys that have martial arts in their background, and the thing about them is that they're natural leaders, and they calm the face of crises, and they also are adaptable. Like one guy in particular, who works with George Miller actually, and I've seen him come in and run a department where he's had no background in doing that, but he somehow is able to bring the essence of what a team needs to be into that workplace, and to get everybody on the same page. It's another skill set above and beyond just what those people do.
What advice would you give a younger version of yourself that was looking to get into this? You just said the martial arts thing, but what else? Man.
So many things. I'm like an old guy now, man. I've got loads of regrets. Look, there's a couple of things. I think that if you really want to do well as an artist, I think in a way you have to be single-minded. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that is the people that I've seen do really well in their careers, in terms of their creative choices or the creative options they have, and financially, are those artists that have picked a path and they've really stuck to it. I think I'm somebody that I've been lucky to work with some incredible people in this business. Yeah. They're way, way more successful than I am. And what I've sort of gleaned from that is, like I've changed my tact so many times. Like I've jumped in and out of so many different aspects of this kind of business, and I think that's just because that's what I'm like. I like to, I'm interested in a lot of things. So it's sort of, I've sort of just had that kind of path. But I think a younger version of myself, I might say, hey man, just pick one thing, maybe just do that, and just get really good at that, and I think that there's a lot to be said for, maybe not for everybody, but I think if you really want to do well, particularly in the movie game, I think going through that process of working from the ground up, getting to a head of department, and really cementing yourself in that discipline, in that expertise, is a really great way to go. The other thing, I think, there's so much advice I'd give to my younger self. I think the other thing is too, maybe not to worry so much, man. I think, there's so much fear and anxiety and pressure around all this kind of stuff, and feeling like you have to, feeling like, oh my God, if I don't succeed at this, the world's going to end, and it never does. And you get through it, and, you get on top of it. I think a little bit of fear is healthy, but I think that, and I sort of see it in students as well, too much worry or anxiety can burn you out too quickly. And I've seen it happen to a lot of people.
So true.
So I think you got to pace yourself in this game as well, and try not to sort of overly anticipate, overthink things. But I'm sure I could probably think of other advice to give.
That's awesome.
Well.
No worries. Well,
invest in real estate, man. That's what I said. Invest in real estate. I wish I'd done that. My cousin did that, and he's got no
Crazy
worries
rich.
now.
Yeah.
That's it, kids. Get into real estate.
That's it. Yeah. I was thinking about that. I was like, I'm looking at investing more as well. Well, I want to say thank you for coming on tonight. This has been awesome. I really appreciate your time, brother.
Hey, man, thank you. It's always lovely to talk to you, and it's great to have a chance to just chat about stuff.
Well, and try to inspire people with what we're sharing too. And if you ever have anything you pop up after we're done, you're like, you know what? I want to talk to people about that. Let me know and come back on. You're always welcome.
I mean, I'd love to come back on. I mean, I think there is so much to talk about,
right?
And I think for people that are kind of getting into any industry, but particularly for us, like the creative industries, you gotta love it, man. I think it's just that's for me the biggest takeaway with all this stuff, and it's what I say to my students. They're always like, how do I get into the business, and what do I do? And sure, you've got to make contacts, and it's a social game and all that sort of stuff. But at the absolute heart of it, whatever you do, if you want to do it well, you gotta love it. You gotta. It's gonna take you through the tough times, and you gotta have that fire in the belly, as you say.
Yeah.